Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and once again it is time for the Q&As, and as usual I'm going to try to do two parts on this and then get a separate Gear Talk Q&A up for you guys later. So let's go ahead and get this started. First question. Hi Jason, I drink a lot of coffee and I found out there are even some days where I go over the recommended daily intake of caffeine over 400 milligrams. Could this have some negative impacts? All right, that's a good question. And as far as coffee goes, coffee is one of those things that you need to consider that there are both positives and negatives to health for. It's one of those food sources that some people think is horrible, some people think is wonderful, and the truth is it's somewhere in between. Quick cliff notes, the health benefits of coffee. It has antioxidants in it, a fair amount. Coffee intake has been absolutely linked with improving insulin resistance. It has been linked with reducing diabetes rates by up to 70% in people who drink at least 4 strong cups of black coffee every day. Obviously, if you're putting sugar and creamer with trans fats and stuff in it, and most creamers have trans fats, by the way, if you read the label, you're going to offset those benefits. The negatives is that for people who are prone to anxiety, the caffeine in it can cause anxiety problems. People who have heart issues, you can have potential heart issues from it. So what I would say as far as this goes, you build a tolerance to caffeine over time to where if you take caffeine repeatedly for months and years on end, you start to develop a tolerance. And if you're, a lot of times people have to drink a lot of coffee because they have a high tolerance to the caffeine. What I would say is the excessive amount, that 400 milligrams assumes you haven't built a high tolerance to coffee. Beyond that, it comes down to the individual person. What I would say is that if you're drinking so much coffee that you're getting jitters, or you're feeling anxiety of any type and you're prone to anxiety, then you probably need to back your coffee down. And for people who suffer from any sort of anxiety disorder, they're going to need to limit their caffeine intake anyways, because they can largely contribute to that because it's a stimulant. But for people who are not getting any anxiety, they don't get elevated heart rate, they don't get heart palpitations, anxiety attacks, anything like that, you're not consuming enough caffeine from your coffee for it to be a problem. And that's what you need to base it upon. So again, if you're drinking, whatever, 600 milligrams of caffeine from coffee every day, but you're not suffering any of those negative effects and you've been doing this for a while, odds are that you have a high enough tolerance to caffeine that you're just simply not suffering negative effects, and it's probably fine. Proceed. And remember, coffee actually has a lot of health benefits. But again, the negatives to coffee come to people who are prone to anxiety disorders or who have any sort of heart condition. If you have any sort of heart condition, unfortunately, caffeinated coffee is probably completely out for you anyways. Bad idea. Your doctor's going to tell you the same thing. All right, next question. Jason, is splitting wood with a 12-pound splitting maul a good full body workout? I love to split wood pretty much on a daily basis and was wondering if this is a good exercise for strength and conditioning. Thanks. Love the channel. No, splitting wood is great. I used to do it every day after school for about 20 minutes every single day when we lived in a colder place up in the mountains when I was in high school for 3.5 years. And I found it to be a fantastic form of conditioning work. And if I ever move to a colder place again, then obviously I'll go back to doing that. As far as it being a workout, no, I wouldn't call it a workout. A workout is generally planned training, planned progression where you can affect overload. Splitting wood like that is just like swinging a hammer at a tire that you see people doing. It falls under the area of GPP, which is general physical preparedness. Now, is splitting wood with a big heavy maul a great form of general physical preparedness, particularly for the upper body? Yes, absolutely. I think it's fantastic for people who want to get into shape. It'll save you a lot of money on a big hydraulic log splitter if you live in a cold place where you need to have firewood. But again, that's not everybody out there. But if that's you, yes, splitting wood every day, fantastic form of GPP work, and I think it's one of the best out there because it serves multiple purposes. It helps obviously keep your house warm or whatever you do with wood. A lot of people do campfires and stuff outside, like doing outside cooking and stuff even on the weekends at their home, out in a pit in their backyard. So there's a lot of uses for firewood like that, not just keeping your house warm. So it's a great form of very practical general physical preparedness. And that's the thing that people need to realize. A lot of the best general physical preparedness out there that coaches use for various strength athletes is actually just practical manual labor. Swinging a hammer, swinging an axe, baling hay. That's what you see out here in Texas, is another practical form of GPP that you see tons of out in the country. And that's one of the reasons all these country boys do so well oftentimes in football from these smaller towns in Texas, is because they're out there baling hay and building fences. They're doing general physical preparedness in the form of manual labor that actually builds up their overall strength and strength conditioning. Again, you stack bales of hay for 2 hours straight on a trailer, and these bales weigh 80 pounds apiece that you're having to put up sometimes over your head, it's going to build up a lot of strength stamina. Same thing with driving fence posts, driving T-posts out on a ranch all day long is actually pretty hard labor. So a lot of the little ranch work like that, or busy work that people think of out in country areas, is actually some of the best GPP you're going to find. And a lot of it, again, you can actually turn it into something practical and useful. In fact, a lot of the younger guys out there go bale hay for GPP work and then get paid to do it. So sometimes these little practical things that people do for GPP that you can go do a couple times a week and make money doing. In fact, if you're a younger guy, you like splitting wood, you might find some of your neighbors will pay you a little bit of money to split their firewood so you can get the best of both worlds. Just throwing it out there for you younger guys on a budget. Splitting wood, shoveling snow, things like that can be part of your GPP work. Again, there's a reason sometimes some manual laborers that you meet are bigger and stronger than guys who lift weights, because they've been doing it a long time. Consistency is everything. All right, next question. What is the expected ratio of muscle to fat gain? I recently gained 25 pounds in 2 months. According to the calipers, it was 14 pounds lean mass and 11 pounds of fat. Is that acceptable or poor diet? wADA banned, but legal things were used. All right, brother, 14 pounds of muscle gain in 2 months exceeds what we see even in studies on certain anabolics, and I have a pretty good idea of what you mean by legal things. Those things are going to be weaker than anabolics are. They're still going to help you, but they're going to be weaker than that. So your caliper readings are off, but that's okay because calipers are considered to be the single most inaccurate form of measuring changes in body composition, with DEXA scans being the most accurate. 25 pounds in 2 months, even on drugs, probably too much, but I would say the ratio would be fine, other than your numbers are probably off. And there's also probably a lot of water weight gain there that you're not accounting for. But normally for anyone past the novice phase, it's generally going to be considered a fairly effective clean bulk if you gain them in a 1-to-1 ratio, meaning you gain 5 pounds of muscle and you gain 5 pounds of fat with it. That's considered a very effective clean bulk. And a lot of guys are like, well, can't you just gain muscle without fat? Yeah, but it's going to take you 4 times as long. It can totally be done, but there's a difference between taking 6 months for an intermediate to gain 5 pounds of muscle versus taking 2 years. That's the difference between being willing to gain that 5 or 6 pounds of body fat or not with it. So that's what it comes down to. How quickly do you want it? 6 months versus 2 years. It literally takes 3 to 4 times as long to gain muscle with no fat gain, unless you, or 1, have noob gains, 2, you've detrained extensively, or 3, you've gone on anabolic drugs. Those are your 3 exceptions. And outside of that, lean gains in any relatively quickly manner, or any quick manner, are pretty much a myth, so it's not going to happen. But as far as someone like you, I saw your photo, you're a pretty big guy already, so for you, you're well past your novice phase. So being able to gain them in a 1-to-1 ratio is perfectly acceptable, and that would be a perfectly acceptable clean bulk. And remember, at the end of the day, 5 pounds of fat doesn't take that long to diet off, so it's not that big of a deal. All right, next question. I've heard that vertical jump and athletic power in general is largely fixed by genetics and can't be changed to a significant degree other than losing lots of weight in the case of the vertical jump, or improving technique. Is this true? I'll say that it seems to be true for me. I hit a double body weight squat soon, and I'm still the same distance from touching the rim as the day before I started training. I know the squat isn't power specific training, but I would expect there to be some carryover. Yeah, absolutely. There should be some carryover. And usually hitting a double body weight squat is considered to be one of the most important goals for developing peak power in any playing sport like that, whether it's basketball, football, whatever. That should usually be your goal. And what we find is that going beyond a double body weight squat very rarely improves performance on the field very much. So that's kind of your golden standard. So that should help. But I think in this case, you're probably gaining strength in the muscle mass, but you're not necessarily building more power doing it. So what I would recommend, now that you've developed that basic strength, and once you get to that double body weight squat, you're going to need to do more plyo boxes. You're going to need to do jumping on plyo boxes, both with just body weight as well as weighted vest. Maybe consider incorporating some jumping squats, and you need to start considering, because again, assuming you're really working on your vertical because you want to be good at basketball because you're talking about the rim, I would also consider doing dynamic effort work, first starting with chains and then work towards doing it with bands, because that band training with that overspeed eccentrics on a box squat combined with the plyo box jumping is probably going to develop your power more. And power is largely genetic, you're right, but all of these techniques should be able to add inches to your vertical leap. It's not completely genetically fixed. It's largely affected by genetics, but you can train your body to have more peak power so that you can get more explosiveness to jump higher on the vertical. These are all time-proven methods coaches have used. So now that you're getting close to that double body weight squat, your base strength is where you need it to be. You don't need to focus on increasing your max squat anymore. Now you need to focus on power. So that's going to be plyo box jumps, and rotate through on different days with those to where you're doing them with body weight for maximum jump height, and then you need to be doing them with a weighted vest on a lower box and rotate through those either workout to workout or week to week. And you need to consider doing dynamic effort squatting, again, starting with chains and working up towards using bands for overspeed eccentrics on it. And that will help improve your speed and power also. The other thing you need to do is make sure those squats are all pause squats. All right, next question. Hey Jason, can you go more in depth on the role of metabolic fatigue has in strength and hypertrophy? I know once a person can't add more weight or reps, they basically stimulate most of the muscle growth, but when that becomes more difficult, the answer seems to be to add more volume. Yeah, let me put it in a nutshell for you. The metabolic fatigue generally has a twofold pathway through which it helps you build muscle mass. Number one, it exhausts all your stamina fibers and it forces you to start recruiting upper threshold fibers later into the sets and later into the workouts because of all the fatigue that you've built up in the stamina fibers, and even a weight that's not quite heavy enough on the first few reps for you to recruit upper threshold fibers. Let's say, your 10 rep max, you probably don't hit any of those fibers on the first 3 to 5 reps. And then after that, because you're fatigued, you start to hit them. So it's just another method to get you to the same upper threshold fibers you would be hitting while doing 1 to 3 reps with really, really heavy weight. You're just taking more time to get there with a lighter weight by creating fatigue in your more stamina oriented muscles so that they're not capable of lifting the weight anymore. So you're just getting it through a different pathway. The other thing with the more volume is the hormonal response. And I normally tell you guys transient hormone fluctuations, most of them don't affect muscle mass, but cortisol does. By increasing training volume, you increase stress hormones during your workout near the end, and we have found a strong correlation. Unlike with HGH and testosterone, we have found a strong correlation in all the meta-analysis that were done on this between cortisol elevation post-training and anabolic response and protein turnover later in the day. So what you're doing, creating those extra stress hormones, can create a larger anabolic response to the catabolic training stimulus you put in, as long as it's not so excessive that it can't recompensate for it. So the whole point there is that what you find is that when you can no longer increase the weight on the bar, you can no longer increase the reps. The reason people go to volume is then because it can go ahead and force those upper threshold fiber growth, as well as an additional catabolic response, which actually breaks down tissue proteins in a negative way during your training. And as long as it's kept within a reasonable amount that your body can recover from, it will go ahead and again increase protein synthesis afterwards so that you build more muscle mass. Now the thing is, of course, that has a limited application. That won't work forever either, but the idea is that when you undulate these things over time, so that once you've had to go to more volume for a few weeks, hopefully you will have built some muscle mass from it. Now that you've built muscle mass from it, you can go back to adding weight on the bar with the lower volume again. And that's what we've done with periodization, and that's why they found various forms of periodization work, and it's the most effective long-term approach to gaining muscle mass. So hopefully that clears that up for you. All right, next question. Would something like Tabata right after lifting weights still have the same negative effect on strength and size as HIIT does? Yes, absolutely. It has the potential to do so. Unfortunately, the research we're seeing more and more of being done on HIIT in general, and Tabata is a form of HIIT, is that HIIT can actually interfere with muscle growth. It can be a problem, but particularly doing mixed workout like that, again, immediately after your weight training, can cause some interference with your gains. Now, for people who aren't trying to gain muscle at any really significant rate, it's not going to be as big of a deal. But what you need to remember is that any sort of additional training stimulus after you lift weights is going to interfere with your body's adaptation to the training. And the adaptation is what gives you your size and strength. There is going to be some interference. It doesn't mean it's going to stop all of it, but it is going to blunt some of the training response. You need to generally stick to active recovery type things after you train, which could be, foam rolling, so anything with myofascial release, additional stretching, light band work, or even small amounts of list cardio, meaning you could go get on a bike and pedal at an intensity that you would normally be able to do an hour of, and just do 10 minutes of it after you train, and it might help clear some of the waste products out. It might help you recover a little bit without any negative effect, because the intensity itself is so low that it's not having any sort of real training stimulus, so it's not a big deal. But Tabata, or any style of HIIT or conditioning work or GPP done immediately after you lift, could potentially interfere with the training stimulus and the signal that it sends to your body for training. So as a general rule, yeah, you need to avoid Tabata immediately after you lift. I absolutely wouldn't do that. And for people who don't know what that is, just Google it. There's a lot of stuff out there. It's been around a long time. But yeah, guys, stick to active recovery things only after you train, unless your goal is maximum fat loss. And if your goal is maximum fat loss, I would say low intensity or medium intensity cardio immediately after you lift would probably be your most effective means of adding extra calorie burn, because quite frankly, it has very, very little additional fatigue put upon the body. You have to remember, you have a maximum recoverable amount of fatigue that you can subject your body to every day and every week, and that does get diminished when calories go down when you're trying to cut. But something like really low intensity cardio has almost no fatigue effect. So that would be your best option for maximizing fat loss. But it will reduce muscle growth. But if you're trying to lose fat quickly, you're not really trying to gain much muscle anyways. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time in part 2.